Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to Film with Purpose, social commentary, and discourse in the movies. I'm super excited for tonight. This has been part of an ongoing independent study I've been conducting with the WUFT Dial Center Public Speaking Lab. And tonight we'll be hearing from some amazing panelists on their experience with advocacy in film. So give it up. Woo! I want to say a huge thank you to Professor Houston Wells, who will be our moderator tonight and will be leading our discussion. Woo! Tonight, our panelists include Allison Larson, Iman Zawari, and Matthew Abramson. Some of you may know them, some of you may not, but they're all experts in filmmaking with digital media, documentary work, and movies. Tonight, the panel will start with a few short questions for our panelists, and at the end, there will be a Q&A for all of you if you have questions for our lovely panelists. And now I will hand over the mic to our lovely moderator, who will take it from here.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'm going to, I've got a short list of questions, as Sarah alluded to. I think rather than call on folks individually, maybe I'll just throw the ideas out there and then we can sort of hash them out together. So the first one is, considering the title of this evening's panel, Film with Purpose, Social Commentary and Discourse in the Movies, I kind of want to expand this just a little bit beyond just the idea of traditional movies, because we've got folks here with a lot of experience kind of across the gamut as far as visual storytelling, film-based storytelling. But with that in mind, can you tell us a little bit about your experiences with creating messages that matter, whatever that means for you?
Again, Matt Abramson, good to meet y'all. So I work with media services, and we do a great number of projects that are broadcasted on WUFT, TV, FM, GHQ, but a lot of public media station content. And one of the big things we do is greater good. And so that is like a really brief storytelling. We put like 4 different stories about nonprofits together and try to use a lot of filmmaking techniques to get their story told very briefly, concisely, but thoroughly, including all the details of what's happening, what their programs entail, what their needs are, how they interact with the community, and so on and so forth. So as Houston was saying, filmmaking as we know it is spilling into the internet and digital spaces and social. A lot of times you see stories and film being produced in verticals on TikTok and broken up into like really micro chapters. And so it's evolving. And so from the standpoint of legacy broadcast media, we still have the opportunity to do a lot of that kind of storytelling and messaging, and in this case, cause messaging and making sure that nonprofits are out there in front of the community and able to share what the causes are and what the good is that they're able to do.
Hi, I'm Allison. I am a documentary filmmaker and adjunct here. So my experience has been with documentary film. One of the films that I was involved with was Being Michelle with Orange Kite Productions, and that was a story of a deaf and autistic woman in the criminal justice system. Her trauma through that, through her whole entire life, and then her healing through her art and just kind of getting out of that cycle. And so within that, I was the camera operator and associate producer. And there is a director and producer, husband-wife team out of LA, and then we told the story out of Williston. And so the advocacy there was really just getting the awareness out of how many people are actually incarcerated with disabilities, and then like the right to communication while you're in the criminal justice system, from like court hearings to like actually being incarcerated. And so kind of building awareness through that. And a lot of documentaries in the past have been awareness pieces, but now they're moving to impact campaigns, and so you can be an impact producer, and so it's like, where does your documentary live beyond the screen, and how do we not just build awareness, but build action for communities? So they brought this to deaf and disabled organizations, all across the U.S., really hammered at home with their screenings, Q&A, panels, all of that. And then I am currently co-directing Reef Keepers, which is a story about the people behind the restoration efforts on Florida's coral reef. It's a deeply human story about like their loss, their grit, their innovation, and above all, their hope for restoring something that's protected our shores for generations. And so I am like in the bowels of that currently. And the advocacy there is to reach Floridians for sure. I mean, we want to do the film festivals, of course. But getting the message out that hope is action, and that in this climate that we are in this climate change era, and everything that's shifting around us, that there is not hopelessness, that you can do something, that when we're looking at Mount Everest, the little actions add up while we figure out long-term solutions. So yeah, we're going to build an impact campaign and hopefully launch the film next year. And that's my experience.
Hi, everyone. I'm Iman. I am a filmmaker, a narrative comedic filmmaker in particular, and I do social justice filmmaking, and particularly through comedy. Actually, just everything I do is advocacy in my life, community-wise, particularly for marginalized communities, and then doing it through film. So, yeah, I don't know where to start. What are we supposed to? Start with the movie. My feature film that I made was called Americanish, which is the first American Muslim romantic comedy made by Muslim women about Muslim women, and in itself was a huge advocacy for showing that Muslim women have agency over their own lives and that they're not a monolith. And it was told through a rom-com. Please watch it. It was distributed by Sony. It's on all the platforms. Support your CJC lecturer. Anyways, and so with that, I also run a nonprofit organization that supports 200 Muslim filmmakers and supporting them to tell the advocacy in their stories. And so documentaries and narratives, and so doing impact campaigns, doing screenings, going to festivals like Sundance, Tribeca, and South by Southwest, and showing their films, because these films are never see the light of day in these huge distribution strategies. So our industry really, as you all know, are huge gatekeepers to these stories. And these stories that are from marginalized communities are usually about some sort of advocacy in terms of their lives, societally, economically, in all those manners. So I do a lot of that work as well in what I do. So yeah.
Is it, so the answer to this question is obvious, but we'll expand upon it. Is it important for these students to learn or know how to advocate?
Yeah, I mean, yes. The answer is yes. Yeah, I think we're all, if you're just interested in filmmaking or you want to do this as a career, I think we get into filmmaking. I always say we're like humans first and then we're filmmakers second. But we get into it because we love storytelling, and storytelling naturally carries messages. We all have something to say, and this is just our medium for it. So I think it's really important to, hone your voice now and experiment with a lot of things and do things that are close to your heart. They say write what you know, right? The stories that you want to tell are very important. And those stories and your voice will evolve over time. So it doesn't have to be super cemented right now. But yeah, I would say that's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, my answer is exactly the same. And I say this to students all the time. It's like, you have your voice. Your voice is advocacy. And that's what you need to understand. And it doesn't have to be, about marginalized communities or about the environment, but whatever you have to say is an advocacy. And so you have to understand what that is, and finding it now. And that's what we do in our classrooms, is trying to find what that voice is incredibly important. And knowing that your voice is just as important as the next person, as Steven Spielberg's, as mine, whatever. Everybody has such an important voice, and that voice is advocacy, and you have something to say. And that's the first thing I say to my students when I'm watching their film. I'm like, what are you trying to say in this? Because there's something you're trying to say. What is it that you're trying to say? If you don't know what you're trying to say, then you don't know your movie and you don't know your story. And so honing that and understanding that, and when you're starting a screenplay, when you're starting a film, understanding that I have something to say. What is it that I want to say? What is it that I want to tell the community? And then we can go from there, because we can go into like Marvel films, like what is a superhero film trying to say? They're all trying to say something, and that's a part of advocacy. So I don't think film is not advocacy at all. It's all advocacy.
This is a tough question, actually, I think. How do your artistic choices reflect your convictions?
For me, everything that's is my conviction. So it's who I'm casting, it's who I'm putting as my DP. Like, it was so difficult to find a female DP, and I was like, I am not shooting this film without a female DP, and I got a female DP. It was who I was casting. I decided to cast American Pakistanis and not someone that would play an accent, because that's what all they see for like South Asians or Arabs or anyone, is like, how do they play an accent? So it was very important for me that it was natural. So the mom character is from India. Like, I'm not going to have someone go up there and play an accent. Down to who my crew was. My crew was 90% women. Like, everything that you do is a part of the advocacy for change, and you have to fight for it, because there is a plethora of non-female, like cast and filmmakers and all types of things, right? Right now on my next film that I'm making, I'm having a huge issue about cast. They're like, and this is literally what I'm getting said by studios, who is the white male you can cast in this so that this film can make money? Because my 3 leads are 3 brown women. And so it's a huge thing, because I'm going to hopefully a different level. And so that is actually happening to me still to this day. And it's a real thing. And so it's constant. Like, I'm actually tired. Like, we're all tired. I say this all the time. I'm tired of advocating. Like, I'm advocating for the students. I'm advocating for myself. I'm advocating for my mentees. Like, it's like advocation constantly. But if you don't advocate for yourself in every single department, every single line, then it's not going to be the vision that you want. And it's not going to create the change that you want it to create.
I'm going to give a slightly different take, but mainly on the context, not necessarily on where the thought process is. So media services at the College of Journalism is a boutique production unit. We're hired guns. If someone has a vision and a budget, you bring us in and we help it, specifically with like greater good, where we tell the stories for nonprofits. So as we come into a nonprofit, we only are there with them for 3 hours. We want to tell the most authentic, true story to their mission, their cause, and their needs. So as far as like leaning to the convictions, I show up, or my staff shows up, and the goal is to cut through all of the jargon, cut through all of the irrelevant parts, and get to like, what do we need to know about you, and what's the most important components. Maybe it's not even what they think it is, it's what we're perceiving and the answers that we're able to extract from the conversation, and then repackage that, present that to them in a way that tries to correctly portray them and all of the values, and be honest and true to those convictions, and hopefully hit those notes for them in that context. So in some cases, it's directly like how you want to put the story out there, and it's the way that you imagine it. But in some of these contexts, you're coming in and you're actually just assisting someone reach that goal and achieve that.
Yeah, I mean, I think to Iman's point, it was, I think like once you have the money and you are like creating these films, because of your beliefs, like we interviewed a female DP, and we intentionally went after I've sought out like who's female with sound, like, because that doesn't, exist quite frequently. So once you have the money, it's like, who are you hiring? Being cognizant of like who's on your crew, and trying to build that community. And we did end up going with a male DP for the film, but it was just because he was different in personality than me and my co-director, and we really needed that. But as far as artistic choices with being Michelle, they were really intentional with her voice. So we were mostly we were an all hearing crew, and everyone around her was hearing. So it was very much like, okay, we are not of the deaf community, and so how is this film going to be valid and received in the deaf community? So they surrounded themselves for the Impact campaign. They sought out an executive producer who's a deaf lawyer and filmmaker out in LA. They've another woman who's an educator in Texas, who's the Impact producer. And then not only that, we they cut the film, and the first rough cut was like her caregiver was the interpreter. And so every time Michelle would sign, the interpreter, the voice would come on. And then we were just like, that doesn't feel authentic. That doesn't feel real. So like, how do we figure this out? Because it's not her voice. So we essentially let her, write out. She was like, she is an artist, and so she paints, and so that was art therapy, kind of getting through her trauma. So she would write out like each letter of the alphabet, and we created a font for her. And so whenever there were subtitles and her voice on the screen, and she was signing, it would be silence, and it would just be literally like her font on the screen that we were reading. And so it was a way to kind of give like her voice, the amplification and the center, it needed to be in the story rather than like us shaping this around like a deaf person and how we would perceive it. And then also building tools of like, there needs to be open and closed captions and picture-in-picture and audio descriptions. And so all these kind of different, cuts, if you will, of the film. And so it can be accessible. And so there was a lot of artistic choices that went there. And then for Reef Keepers, for like the science sort of climate change story, I really do want it to be like an emotionally driven story. And then a personal story. I think a lot of times when we talk about climate and we talk about wildlife, we can become really disconnected. And so I want to talk about these people's families. I want to talk about these people's not anything outside of their jobs. They have dinners with their families. They go on walks with their dogs. They watch the Buffalo and Ravens Bills game. They do all these sorts of things that you and I do. So if we can relate to them, we can relate to their struggle. And through that, like, lens choices and artistic choices and things like that, then we can relate to their journey, and that message just gets embedded more into us as we sit there and have an experience and have our emotions with the film.
So you create these elements, you show them you distribute them, you do the best that you can, you get eyeballs on them, you get brains on them. How are audiences responding to the work that you create?
We had a 50 film festival run worldwide, and it was actually super interesting because we're going from small cities to large cities. And of course, like, I don't think they're going to be like, "Hey man, your movie sucks." So they were very like positive. Of course, it's like, I've never seen myself on screen before. I had people crying to me. One of the biggest one was a Thai American man came up to me and was like, "Thank you for showing me what my in-laws know what what it means to be me in America." And he wasn't, he's not brown or Muslim or whatever. He's Thai. And so it's just like those stories like that. And then like, of course, Muslim women, which we didn't make this film. We made it for like mainstream people, but like, of course, Muslim women felt incredibly seen. And then the mom is them, like the Jewish mom is like, "That's my mom." And that Latino mom is like, "That's my mom." And so it was incredibly well received, audience-wise. I don't know, like critic-wise, because they haters, but it was just really beautiful to see, because making films is incredibly difficult. This film was very incredibly difficult to make. There was fires. There was not money. Literal fires, but not money. Like a lot of issues. It took 10 years to make. I mean, it's a whole thing. And so to see it finally getting out to people and kind of creating and making that change was really important. And then when we were thinking about like advocacy, I really took this on myself as like, this movie has to be as like perfect as it can be, because it's representing, like the first American Muslim rom-com by Muslim women, whatever. And it has to be good, and it has to be gone out, and it has to do all these things. And I think it's hard not to kind of feel that when you're you feel like you're holding a community. And I would advise against that, but it's just what I felt. And so I was pleasantly surprised by the response, because I was like, this is the worst movie ever made when I was done with it. So
yeah, with Being Michelle, did its festival run in 2022, and so I went to 2 festivals with them, but they did their thing, and I think it was really well received. They would have people come up and say this like really impacted my life. I think one of the producer, May, she said they showed it at a high school as a part of, sort of the impact campaign beyond the, film festival screenings of just screenings across the states. And one kid was like, man, I thought, my life was like rough. And then I see Michelle and I see how much she's overcome. I have no excuse. I got to keep going. So it's like, you literally have no idea like how it's going to be received. But just through people's personal stories, it was pretty impactful. And to the deaf and disabled community, they showed it to all sorts of organizations and conferences and things like that. And we did sort of make some inroads with film festivals because they didn't really have interpreters lined up at all. It was 2022. Everyone was like, what do you mean you need like 2 interpreters per event and per panel and all this stuff? They didn't know how to show audio descriptions and all this kind of stuff. So it was a lot of like groundbreaking in that sense, but I hope that people who make films are a little more inclusive and they have open captions, closed captions, and anyone can watch the films. And hopefully those film festivals now have a process for it.
Should filmmakers worry about being dissuaded from advocating in their work?
We all know what we're living in right now. And every day, someone is trying to dissuade me for saying something about some sort of advocacy in my life. And it's about, it's interesting because I have friends that lost their jobs for saying something. I have friends that have aren't able to make a movie because they said something else. I have people that lost their managers because they said something. I have there's everybody so it becomes, are you going to speak for what you believe in, or are you going to keep your job to give livelihood for your family? This is a real thing that has been happening, particularly in the past 2 years, to so many of the people I know. And so then the question, which is a really hard question, are you going to stand up for what you believe in, or are you going to try to tote the line on, maybe I shouldn't say this, or maybe I shouldn't tell this this film or this story because I'm scared of what's going to happen, when a lot of that has been happening in our communities. I'm not that guy. So I say what I want to say all the time. I have a huge support from, the college and everybody else and my film community. And I'm very privileged in that way, but I don't think that I can move forward in my life if I didn't speak for what I believed in and for the causes that I believe in. So I, of course, would always be like, say what you got to say. But if someone comes to me and tells me, well, I have a family to feed, and if I say this, I will lose my job, I'm like, yeah, I mean, dude, I totally understand. No judgment. But I would always say, try to do what is in your heart.
Agreed. I just agree. My knee-jerk reaction was like, no, just say it loud and proud. Do whatever you need to do. But again, if my job goes away or people revoke funding and they're like, oh, I don't like what you said, I'm gonna, take my grant, or, because of your stance on climate change or where you're at, and you're kind of weaving between all these kind of different groups in Florida. If people did that and I never made the film, it's like my kids are still going to be fed. So, I come from that place of privilege. So yeah, I understand people who are going to lose their jobs because of it, for sure.
Building on this idea, and I know that's a challenging question. I think one of the challenges here is that we're using this term advocacy, this idea of advocacy, and we probably have as many definitions of that as we have people in this room. So with that, accepting that in mind, and this is sort of our last prescribed question for the evening, is there hope, in your minds, obviously, is there hope for advocacy in filmmaking?
I would say yes. I'll keep this brief mainly because I think people want to see stories that are, real, true, whether it's a narrative or it's unscripted. It really hits home and, tells you what it wants to tell you and doesn't beat around the bush. So from that standpoint, I think it'll always align with authenticity and reach an audience and feel true. So yes, I think regardless of how the form changes and the platforms adjust and the duration and the vertical video, I mean, ultimately you're still trying to get to the same emotive output from your audience. Take them on a roller coaster, bring them up, bring them down, and leave them feeling different, changed, or at least knowing that they have to think about this story differently now. So yes, I think it'll always stay really relevant to the content itself.
I love your flowery answers. They're just very. So when you are like hit down constantly, it's hard to have hope, you know, like particularly like right now. But I will tell you, yesterday gave me hope. So you know, but what your politics are aside, you know, seeing that experience in New York, it was a grassroots advocate movement, and it succeeded. And so that truly gave me hope, because I was like, okay, maybe there is something out there that we can kind of like amend and change, no matter what, you know, your political affiliation is. So, and then what's super cool about that situation, like Zahran Mamdani's mom is Mira Nair, who's my, the reason why I'm a filmmaker. She's my inspiration. And she's a huge, huge filmmaker. And she made Mississippi Masala. And that was when I was like, oh, brown women can make movies. And so that was with Denzel Washington. I know you guys watched it. It was one of the first movies. I don't know if you've seen it. Anyways, she's a huge filmmaker. And it's like, when people are like, this dude is coming up, I'm like, who cares about this dude? His mom is like a really famous filmmaker. But like kind of that, you know, just the turnaround. And she they're so cute. She's like, I'm producer of The Candidate. I'm like, yes, film, like advocacy in every single way, from like producing someone that's going to do change. And so it was just a lot of different like levels of hope that happened that I really appreciated. So I do feel like, and this is going to be so cheesy, but like you create the hope, you know, like even in the smallest little ways, even if it's something on your little set, even if it's something like in your little classroom, it's like you're creating hope as you move throughout every day.
That was great. Yeah. Yes. To piggyback off that, I think that, there is hope, and hope as action. And if we can take the small wins or the large wins and move forward, that knowing that like hope is not just some feeling you have and then it goes away. It is like work. It is like discipline. It is like you showing up with like your water bottle every day, reducing your plastic, calling your representatives. It is literally you doing the actions, like even when you don't feel like it. And those things add up. And so over long term. So I think it's just like really relishing in the wins, big and small, and then just like your simple steps absolutely matter, and that keep that hope spark alive.
Thank you all. Can we get a big round of applause for our lovely panelists and our moderator?